It's hard to drown out the voices sometimes. Imagine you're listening to a radio, right? I mean, you know what that is. A radio? Those are still around? Okay, good. Sorry, I had to make sure. I only learned a couple of months back that minidiscs never really took off. Imagine my surprise. Anyway, you're listening to the radio, right? And it's playing some tunes. There's some guests talking about this or that, some commercials. Imagine then that there is this constant buzz, some faulty wiring, maybe something wrong with the signal. There's a tiny bit of static electricity coming in all the time. That's the voices. I don't know about you, but personally, I was an editor for a major news network, so my ears were really good at picking that stuff up. I mean, they still are. I went through hours upon hours upon hours of material all the time, cutting and pasting. I mean, you know the drill. I got so attuned to this stuff that I could pick up the smallest little hiss or noise in a recording, and it would drive me nuts. Noise cancellation, noise gates, reduction, denoising, I know it all. Hell, I even invented some of the methods. You know that fancy way that you can select a small portion of audio in a recording and make a print of it and then delete all audio that matches that in a bigger file? Yeah, that was my idea. Right? I know this. I know my stuff. So anyway, the voices, right? They're never too loud that I can't hear what's going on, but sometimes I just tune in on their wavelength, right? My ears just kind of focus on that stuff, and then I can't pay attention to what's happening around me. And man, that's a pain, I tell you. Just last week, this self-proclaimed head of my coterie, Jackie, she gave me an earful because I was being disrespectful to the prince. Told me we were walking a thin line and all that jazz, but I just had to tell it as it was. I was hearing the voices. And besides, I'd not done anything inappropriate. I never do. I just kind of zone out and... I mean, it happens when I'm eating, you know? Feeding. I guess that's the proper term for it. Feeding. Sounds like something you do to animals. You feed animals. I mean, I guess you feed babies too, right? Feed the children. Feed the starving, the homeless. But we're feeding ourselves. I don't think I had ever used that word in that way when I was a human. I'm gonna go feed now. Have you? Why don't we just say eat? Or drink? I mean, it makes more sense, doesn't it? Also, like, the Masquerade, you know, people would be like, why are you saying feeding? If you ever say it in front of people. Anyway, so the voices, right? There are all kinds of voices, old and young, deep and light, airy and gravelly, the whole thing. It's like you got the entire balanced diet of voices at once, and they tell me important stuff sometimes. That's the worst of it. They'll blab about some inconsequential shit for hours upon hours upon hours, and then BAM! They drop the take of the century, and I know that if I miss that, it'll come back and bite us in the ass, because I know it will. It's happened plenty of times before. So, like I said, sometimes I just tune out. I just close out the rest of the world because I get a hunch that maybe they're going to tell me that the prince is actually some Sabbat infiltrator, or maybe Jackie's secretly a Diablerist. You know, you never know. So I have to listen right, and I have to make sure that I catch whatever prophetic line of words that might pop out of their collective mouths. Mouths at any moment, literally any moment, or my coterie is done for, or I'm done for, or the entire city is done for. I mean, that's been the case at least once. So that's why I don't kill that often, you see. I mean, when I'm feeding, drinking, eating. There's already so many of them in there. I can't add another voice to the mix. It'd take me weeks to get used to it, and the city might fall before I do. So what kind of stuff do you listen to? Answering the question on how to play a Malkavian may seem like an impossibility. They are a clan united not by traditions, looks, or obligations, but by their diversity. Malkavians are cursed with madness, it is said, but how this manifests is altogether unique in each member of the Clan of the Moon. There are so many facets to Malkov's curse that to attempt to catalog them all would be an exercise in futility. One can certainly trace some similar manifestations of it through bloodlines. After all, the supposed sires of Teresa and Jeanette Vorman share a similar relationship. But even then, there is nothing to suggest that a childer will inherit their sire's madness, or that the curse will manifest within the realm of mortal mental illnesses, even if there may be similarities. Some Malkavians actually go through cycles of these curses, experiencing highs and lows and having their minds mutate and alter as new revelations bring clarity and a renewed sense of understanding to them. There are certain Malkavians, like Dr. Douglas Netchurch, who reject the notion of a curse entirely, and who remains a high-functioning member of the vampire community, while others struggle even among their own fellow lunatics. A few, often young Malkavians, will fight against their state of mind incessantly, desperate for a rock to cling to as the storm rages around them, scared to let go and let the waves carry them away, while others will ride it fully to explore new thoughts and sensations it brings. There is no right or wrong way to do this, as the madness of their antediluvian has no care for their feelings, but older Malkavians will often have more of an understanding of the ebb and flow of their blood, able to explore it more fully without drowning themselves in the overwhelming sensation thrown their way. The Clan of the Moon is also known for their affinity to prophecy, its gift coursing through their veins, whether they like it or not, and therefore so many of them are also gifted by visions of what has been, what is, and what may be, often with little to no guidance on how to interpret these auguries. Some resort to occult tools in hopes that it will bring some clarity to what they see, while others may instead attempt to deafen or enhance their visions through the consumption of drug-tinted blood. The Malkavians were in fact the ones who discovered the theory of resonance of the blood, the effect powerful emotions might have on the flavor and characteristics of what they consume, and some even profess themselves as blood sommeliers, able to guide their clients to the ultimate emotionally tinted drinking experience. So, knowing how diverse the clan is it then any surprise that the Malkavians generally tend to not present a very unified front? While the Toreador are often defined as the artistes, the Ventru as the leaders, the Gangrel as the outsiders, and so on, it is hard to pin down exactly what the Malkavians are. What role do they fill in the court? They can be scientists and artists, great warriors, or skilled occultists, sometimes all of that at once. For with this lack of definition comes also a personal freedom for most of its members. They are free to do as they will, for the most part, and are given a certain leeway in this by the other clans who understand, or at least tolerate, their uniqueness. Yet, of course, there are few older kindred who will be quick to dismiss the Cassandras as being harmless. They know from experience that the Malkavians can be just as wily and prone to scheming as any of them, and while their ways may appear inscrutable to others, this is in fact their greatest strength. A clever Malkavian may rival a Nosferatu Warren in what they know about the kindred of the city, and may even take some perverse pleasure in revealing sensitive information that might have cost the Nosferatu dearly to get a hold of, if only to show them the folly of their hard work. If anything, the Malkavians are the child from the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, unfettered by the mores and notions of society, and capable of seeing and revealing the simple truth that everyone else pretends does not exist. And to aid them with this, the clan has 3 disciplines that define them: Auspex, Obfuscate, and Dominate, the last one which we will discuss to a greater extent as well. Auspex, the ability to enhance your senses and perceive what might not otherwise be seen, is of course a power with many uses for the Malkavians. It allows them to receive prophetic visions, to perceive the auras of others, and to gauge their nature and temperaments. At higher levels, Auspex allows the Malkavian to ride others, perceiving the world through their senses, or even outright taking full control over mortal bodies. Obfuscate, meanwhile, is the power to hide and to blend in, and the Malkavians, like the Nosferatu, are masterful users of this. But while the Nosferatu are famous for it, many tend to forget that the Malkavians know it too. Indeed, the lunatics are so often overlooked that one has to wonder whether this is part of their power. But regardless, they will often resort to obfuscate to observe and learn, or to play interesting pranks on unsuspecting victims. Some Malkavians even employ the power of wielding another face to reinvent themselves, going to great lengths in creating new lives that they might live with full devotion, until they get bored or otherwise move on, often with little care for those they leave behind. Finally, dominate is a power that the Malkavians share with many other kindred who tend to rule over others, and indeed it has been with this clan for a long time, although in many different forms. Originally, they wielded a discipline called dementation, which was specialized in causing effects of madness upon their victims, allowing the Malkavians to wield their clan's curse as a weapon. It can be argued that this was a highly specialized form of dominate, and during a long stretch of time, dementation was locked away from the Malkavians of the Camarilla before it was given back to them in the late 90s. Now, however, it is merely a subset of dominate, but it does retain its potent ability to induce mental duress upon their victims. Malkavians are historically known to have been great leaders, and there are still a few princes of their clan, and their ability to wield this discipline is evidence of their somewhat decorated past. When it comes to relationships with other clans, where does one even begin? It is easier to speak of other clans' perceptions of them than the other way around. For so varied and sometimes self-contradictory are the Malkavians that it is difficult to pin down any kind of communal attitude. The Malkavians may feel a certain kinship with the Banu Hakim because, as some of them might argue, despite having little to no idea where they learned it, they believe that the founder of the children of Hakim, like their own, resides in his childer's blood. They are, as the Malkavians, bound tightly by their founder's desires. The Bruja long for a freedom that they could take if they wanted to, and up until recently the Malkavians were certain that they never would. Like intelligent dogs, they knew that the door to freedom could be open, they saw others do it many times, but it never really occurred to them that they could do it themselves, at least not until a certain meeting in Prague. The gangrel to the Malkavians are just posers. They act big and tough and mean because they want to appear mysterious and hard to get, but if you ignore them, they'll sulk like anyone else. They're like preteens, wearing all the right clothes to look just the right amount of out of place, and they could learn a thing or two from the Cassandras. They do, however, appreciate that the gang will often speak their mind, and the two make, at times, good allies. The La Sombra, those poor fools, were running headfirst into their own destruction, even with one of the most powerful Malkavians in the world at least partly guiding the Sabbat with them. But lately they've had a change of heart, and now it is difficult for the Malkavians to get a read on them. Has the clan really gotten so desperate that they will subject themselves to the Ventru? No, something else is going on. The Nosferatu, of course, will always resent the Malkavians. They, unlike many of the others, notice them, and they notice what they're doing. The Malkavians, in turn, don't take it personally. In fact, they like the attention, and they like the sincerity of the sewer rats. They're endearing, and can warm up quickly if you treat them kindly, but they don't like being made fun of. The Toreador. The Toreador. The Malkavians share so much with them. They both can see the truth beyond the weave. They both have the sight, but where the lunatics are slaves to it, the Toreador instead choose to believe in the lies. They stare themselves blind at the tapestry, not wanting anything to do with the truth hidden behind it, and it drives some Malkavians mad with jealousy. The Tremere are respected by the Malkavians because they are young, yet they know so much. Like a toddler, they grab for whatever they can find and put it in their mouth. They wish to learn and understand, and the first step to that is to turn over every rock and every stone to see what lies beneath. Sometimes the Tremere even outknows the Malkavians, and that's when it gets really interesting. The Malkavians pity the Ventru. They pity the Blue Bloods for their obsession with the throne they sit upon. It is a painful throne that demands so much and gives so little in return. Yet the Ventru vie for it, they fight each other for it, and they never, ever give it up. It tears at them, rends their flesh, yet should they ever step down, the nakedness of their failures will be the end of them. Pity the Ventru. The three grandchildren of Cain wait patiently for the time of judgment to arise. Bambi Parsons, a leader with an unbreakable will, Procyon, reborn as a god amongst Cain's angels, and Dugal, whose thirst for blood is matched only by his strength of will and purpose. Their childer, the Methuselah, control our every move through their timeless jihad. They are Her Satanic Majesty Danny, whose mere presence chills the heart, Maximilian S. Hardcastle, a tutor and master of the jihad, Socrates Johnson, a masterful craftsman of stories, Lauren Eason, a trustworthy ally and friend, and Alexander Kishtaria, esoteric scholar and mentor in magecraft. On the council of the Primogen are seated Edward Reed, Ian Nichols, Raven Fang, and the Autumn Alchemist, wise leaders and of good judgment. This week, the council would wish to thank the elder Justin S. for your continued insight into matters of our common interest. We would also wish to give our regards to the Ancile Evelyn, whose service to the council has not gone unnoticed. Thank you for your support. Naturally, all our elders, Ancile, and neonates receive our gratitude from the bottoms of our hearts. Without your support, this would not be possible. And thank you for watching. Now be careful out there, for Gehenna may soon be upon us.